Hi. Today was brought to you by the word extrapolate and the word scale. Actually, I don't know if it's exactly the word, it's the concept. Part of the problems that I have in having dialogues with people, in particular in the online context, is because I find that a great deal of people from the United States academic system are not taught how to appropriately compare two things. So since they're not constantly schooled in how to compare things, they often make mistakes in comparison that if they stop and examine them, they can see are just patently false. And it leads to a lot of different kinds of problems. But the main problems that stem from the inability to compare things, as in making the mistake of comparing apples to oranges, which is much of a cliche saying as it is a real problem. But they make a problem out of comparing things that are not related to one another in the way that they assume that they're related. So while one pencil may stand in as a representative for all pencils, you cannot say that one black person stands in as a representative for all black people, nor can a woman stand in for all women, and rightly so, no one man can represent all men. So the problem gets a little bit more problematic in that people take a lot of arguments personally. And that's not a bad thing because it allows you to bring passion to stuff and it motivates you to learn more, hopefully. Instead of just railing more, you should be learning more, and then you'll find that there's plenty of opportunity to rail about what you have just learned. So when you start getting into an argument with somebody and they begin to make arguments along the lines of A, mistaking a fact or a numerically based, research-based bit of data as an opinion, they need to be caught right there because there's a difference between fact and opinion, and there's a difference between research-based information and general opinion. You cannot call anything that has actually had some serious good research behind it a generalization that you can then trivialize by picking one object and then comparing it as a contrast to what has just been presented. Boy, that's a mouthful. Maybe it doesn't make any sense. But in the context that we're talking about, I put forward in an online conversation some very interesting information that I actually did some fact checking on, and it was not untoward and it wasn't out of scale to say that pornography has become a billion upon billion dollar a year industry and that it is increasingly more and more violent. And in that context, I said, given that it is a multi-billion dollar industry a year, and we know that the industry caters to the created market for hypersexualized violent imagery for men. Men are the market shareholders. Men are the large consumers. Men are the driving force behind this industry. And yet it is a completely dehumanizing industry. And again, I have to correct people when they confuse the difference between dehumanizing and emasculating. This is a dehumanizing industry, and making arguments about it are not detracting from maleness. They're putting into question the idea of accepting an industry-created norm of maleness as one of hypersexualized, entitled, violent behavior towards everyone else that's not them. That it is a creation of the industry and it's not normal male behavior. And in my topic, I said, hey, listen, this is a humongous industry. It caters to men. Men are the reason why this industry is getting larger and larger. Men suffer from it, but disproportionately, women are suffering from it more because normal men are not doing anything really about it other than saying, it's just a thing. Well, it's not just a thing. It is perpetuating some incredibly whack bullshit in our society. And I made a plea for parents and men in particular, normal men, who would otherwise be appalled at any one individual being treated in this manner, to not just tacitly accept the industry norm of masculinity as it's been presented. So that was the argument in a nutshell. But the response that I got to it was, well, what about women who like porn? Simply because women may enjoy porn does not validate the entire porn industry becoming increasingly violent. You've got an issue of scale there. You're having a hard comparison. Then the next thing was, well, women enjoy 50 Shades of Grey. Men enjoy porn because they're visual. 50 Shades of Grey is a bit of smut chick lit, or whatever you want to call it. I haven't read it, so I'm not going to get into a book review of it. But I can tell you right now that, as I said online, a bunch of people do not suffer anal prolapse and ruptures and disease from reading 50 Shades of Grey, whereas they do suffer these things in the porn industry at an alarming rate. And then we can get into labor issues about why people don't have medical care and all sorts of other stuff. But here you have this comparison made. It's called trivialization, and it's something that gender studies people and feminists and a whole bunch of other people study and talk about a lot, where there's a false comparison between one subject and another that trivializes how monumentally important the one subject is by comparing it with something else as if they were comparable. Which you can't do. So, no one person can stand in and represent an entire other group of people. You got to have a real issue with this idea of comparing things or allowing things to be represented in this way. You can't have false comparisons in which you trivialize one thing by equating it to something that's not even in the same realm. And that's a scale issue. And you've got to have a real care when you're talking to people or writing about things or even going about things in your daily life with the knee-jerk behaviors and thoughts that go through your head about making these kinds of mistakes. Because they skew reality. And I really believe, and anybody who knows me believes, anybody who knows me knows that I believe, rather, that self-evaluation is probably one of the hardest things that any human being can do. But it's probably the most worthwhile because it stops you from being an idiot. Guilty, quite often, but we're working on it. And I hope you do too. Bye.